This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Lebanese Hezbollah movement says it will turn southern Lebanon to a big graveyard for the Israeli army if the Zionist regime presses ahead with its aggression on Lebanon. Hezbollah Secretary General Sayyid Hassan Nassrallah, who made a key televised address late Wednesday, also reaffirmed Hezbollah will persistently continue its praiseworthy resistance against the Zionist regime, adding Israel in return should expect regular missile strikes. Referring to Prime Minister Shemona's proposal, which rallied support by Arab states, Nassrallah said Washington and Paris, in their unfair UN Security Council draft resolution, tried to give Israel a political win in compensation for its defeat on the battlefield. He further noted the Lebanon's army, as an inseparable part of the nation, is on hand in southern Litani River, but their absence is felt in Lebanon-occupied Palestine border. Nassrallah went on to say the capture of 2 Zionist soldiers in a purely military operation received condemnation by the international community, whereas surprisingly the UN Security Council is refusing to denounce Israel's massacre of civilians in Lebanon.
عسكري إسرائيلي أكد أن 13 جنديا إسرائيليا قتلوا في المعارك العنيفة التي تجري في قريتي عيدة.
Today, an Israeli military source confirmed that 13 Israeli soldiers were killed in ongoing fierce battles in Ait al-Shab and Debel in South Lebanon. According to the same Israeli military source, 7 Israeli soldiers were killed in Debel, 4 in Ait al-Shab, and 2 in Bint Jbayl. The 4 soldiers killed in Ait al-Shab were killed by anti-tank missiles fired by Hezbollah at their tank. The same Israeli source also confirmed that a number of Israeli soldiers were injured during these battles. The Israeli planes launched airstrikes this morning on the north, center, and east of Lebanon. They targeted roads, bridges, and homes. Meanwhile, a Lebanese security source announced that an Israeli airstrike targeted a home in the town of Mashgara in Bekaa, killing 7 family members.
لم يكن القمر قد غادر سماء مشغر بعد حين شن الطيران الحربي الإسرائيلي غارة على أحد منازل البلدة الواقعة.
Before the moon left the sky of Mashghara, Israeli warplanes launched airstrikes on a town located south of Al-Bekaa. The new massacre targeted one of Hezbollah's political leaders, Hassan Sdair, who was killed along with his wife and 5 children underneath the rubble of their 4-story home. A few hours before that, Israeli planes launched 12 consecutive airstrikes on 11 fuel trucks. 5 drivers were killed and many others were injured. Many Israeli planes are still hovering over southern Lebanon, where massacres were committed on almost all of its roads. Israeli naval frigates bombarded the northern entrance of the Palestinian refugee camp of Ain al-Hilwa, killing 2 Palestinians and injuring 2 children. Less than 48 hours later, another massacre took place in Al-Ghaziyya, killing 6 people who were holding a funeral procession for people killed in another massacre.
وإصابة 5 أطفال بجروح إلى الغازية التي منيت بمجزرة ثانية في أقل من 48 ساعة راح ضحيتها 6 أشخاص كانوا يشيعون مع غيرهم ضحايا المجزرة الأولى. وحولت الغارات
Israeli airstrikes transformed Tyre city and its villages to isolated ghost towns. 1 woman and her 3 children are still underneath the rubble of a mosque that was destroyed by Israeli shelling in Maghroube village. The city of Nabatiyya and other villages surrounding were subjected to 40 air raids, injuring 3 people. The war front in the south, especially in Bint Jbayl, Qantara, and Burj al-Muluk near Marj Ayoun, has not calmed down either. Hezbollah said that its fighters killed 11 Israeli soldiers and destroyed 10 Israeli Markava tanks. One of these destroyed tanks had tried to advance towards the town of Qantara. The Israeli army acknowledged that 2 of its soldiers were killed in these clashes. هيفاء راضي العربية.
اتجاه بلدة القنطرة، في حين اعترف الجيش الإسرائيلي بمقتل 2 من جنوده في هذه الاشتباكات. هيفاء راضي العربية.
وطبعا كما ذكرنا في بداية هذه النشرة
As we said in the beginning of this newscast, the Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert's Internal Security Cabinet decided in its extended meeting to expand the land operations in Lebanon. This comes a month after the Israeli attack on Lebanon, which failed to achieve its military objectives. The office of Prime Minister Ehud Olmert said that the Internal Security Cabinet decided today to expand the land operations in Lebanon with the objective of hitting Hezbollah and preventing it from launching missiles toward Israeli settlements and towns.
تنفيذ هجماته الصاروخية على المدن والمستوطنات داخل إسرائيل.
There has been a shakeup in the Israeli military command over the war on Lebanon. The commander-in-chief of the Israeli army, Dan Halutz, demoted the head of the Israeli military forces Northern Command, General Udi Adam. According to Israeli analysts, Adam was disciplined over stalled military offensive operations in Lebanon and failure to defeat Hezbollah fighters. The government of Ehud Olmert intends to expand its military operations in Lebanon in order to achieve an overwhelming victory over Hezbollah.
It is the war of generals in Israel, and one general in particular has paid the price. According to Israeli analysts, the head of the Israeli military forces, Northern Command, Udi Adam, was fired from his post for failing to coordinate military operations in Lebanon and failing to achieve victory in the war. The commander-in-chief of the Israeli army, Dan Halutz, demoted the head of the Israeli military campaign in Lebanon. The deputy chief of the Israeli army, Moshe Kaplinsky, was appointed to take command of the Israeli military offensive campaign in Lebanon. This shakeup inside the Israeli military command does not happen often. This is the second time in the history of the Israeli army that a shakeup has taken place in the middle of a war. A shakeup took place in 1973 during a war that inflicted heavy tolls on the Israeli army. During the war of 1973, General Chaim Bar-Lev was appointed to head the Israeli military forces Southern Command, replacing General Shmuel Gordich. According to Israeli analysts, the frustration of Halut and Israeli political leaders over Adam's military performance has influenced their decision to replace Adam. The Kfar Giladi's incident, in which 12 Israeli reserve soldiers were killed in a Hezbollah cross-border rocket attack, also played a part in the Adam demotion. Last Sunday's rocket attack by Hezbollah indicated its capability of tapping into messages that have been communicated among Israeli soldiers. This was considered poor performance on the part of Adam while running the Israeli war campaign. Some Israeli analysts confirmed that the appointment of Kaplinsky, who is the former commander of the Israeli military offensive operations in the West Bank, indicates that Israel intends to widen its military operations in Lebanon. Kaplinsky also served as a ground forces leader within the Israeli army, leading the so-called elite Golani brigades in the early 90s. He also served as the head of Israeli military forces, the Galilee division, during the withdrawal of Israeli troops from Lebanon. He served as a military advisor for the former Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon. Kaplinsky sustained injuries in the Battle of Khalet Shekef during the Israeli invasion of Lebanon in 1982.
And it would be the most immoral response for the international community if it were to give up on efforts to achieve an immediate ceasefire. This according to French President Jacques Chirac, who met with top French cabinet ministers regarding the ongoing crisis in Israel and Lebanon. Chirac's comments come as intense diplomatic efforts continued at the United Nations Security Council to reach agreement on a U.S.-French-backed ceasefire draft to end the current war across Israel's northern border. IBA's Dan Dyker reports that French officials today said that Lebanon's government should guarantee the withdrawal of Hezbollah from southern Lebanon as part of any ceasefire deal. France's Foreign Minister Philippe Douste-Blazy said current diplomatic efforts are focusing on finding the right formula between a pullout of Israeli troops and their replacement with a 15,000-man Lebanese force backed by UN troops. Lebanon opposes the current U.S.-French draft and warned today that any introduction of third-party forces must be conditional by an immediate ceasefire and Israeli troop withdrawal. A Security Council vote on the resolution is only expected by late Thursday at the earliest.
Israel is ready to cease hostilities and to withdraw its forces if these effective measures will come in its place, so that the terrorist threat on its citizens will finally be brought to an end. We want a ceasefire, but a ceasefire that sows the seeds of future peace, not of future conflict.
Regrettably, the draft resolution not only falls short of meeting many of our legitimate requests, but it also may not bring about the results that the international community hopes it would achieve. We requested an immediate ceasefire. What has taken so much time is still not an immediate ceasefire. Neither immediate nor ceasefire.
We really want to move swiftly, but we have to do it rightly. We have to address, as I have said before, not only the question of the immediate cessation of hostilities, because people, the civilian population is suffering, but also the question of a sustainable, how to, best contribute to a sustainable solution.
And as we see, the situation between the war situation, we see a lot that we better have a ceasefire as soon as we can, and the Security Council is called upon to bear its responsibility and decide the ceasefire or the immediate cessation of hostilities.
After 28 days in shelters, some beleaguered residents of Kiryat Shemona last night and today loaded on buses and headed south for a period of government-sponsored rest and relaxation. 11,000 civilians remain in Kiryat Shemona. 2,000 of them visited the municipality yesterday to sign up for furloughs. The first bus loads carried those thought to have the greatest need to leave the war zone. The departure was an emotional one for residents of the northern city, which has been hit the most heavily by daily terrorist rocket barrages. The government is calling it periods of refreshment for 2 to 4 days in places like Tel Aviv and around the Sea of Galilee. In Tel Aviv, the Israel Trade Fair and Convention Center will host thousands of northerners who will provide activities and live entertainment for their guests.
You know that we are under war, and all the northern cities in Israel suffers from the fact that all the residents, or most of them, should stay in for a long time in the shelters. And it's very difficult, and so the idea is to evacuate some of the people, mainly the weak people in the communities, elderly people, these who suffers from disease or something like this, and children and youngsters. To take them to the center and the south part of the country.
And how long will they be taken from the area for?
It depends. Actually, we started in this kind of operations almost from the beginning of the war. But now in special cities that are under a barrage of rockets, like Kiryat Shemona, from which we are broadcasting now, we think about many of people. I mean, there are many that it's too long that they are now in the shelters, and they need to what we call to take air a little bit, and so the idea is that we will organize under one roof with the cooperation of the municipality and all the governmental ministries to have the information exactly who are these people that we have to take them out of this area. And I'm now on my way to meet Mr. Chaim Barbivai. He is the mayor of Kiryat Shemona, in order to try to understand and to analyze the situation, in order to together we will run this operation hopefully from tomorrow morning.
Last question. Isn't the government concerned that if they evacuate people for 4 to 5 days to recuperate, that they're simply not going to want to return to Kiryat Shemona or the cities that they're leaving?
I think that you underestimate the spirit of the people here. They need some, fresh air, but they love their community. They are very strong in spirit, and they're very determined to stay in their home and in their community in Kiryat Shemona.
Amidst different opinions between political and military authorities in Israel with regard to the assault on Lebanon, people in Israeli settlements are raising their voices against their leaders.
The Israeli assault on Lebanon is being met with Hezbollah's shelling of Israeli settlements, which is leading the residents of these areas to raise their voices. They feel neglected by Olmert's government, which is busy killing Lebanon's children and other civilians and destroying its infrastructure. The resentment of the Israelis of the northern areas is clear in their voices.
The situation here is very bad. There is total chaos in the pharmacy and everywhere. This is not life. This is not a suitable shelter. I've been on medicine for 5 years. Today there is no medicine. I go to the pharmacy to ask about it and they say we have none. Just chaos. When is this going to end? When?
Here you feel alone and under the mercy of Hezbollah, and not under the care of the government, the leaders, or anyone else in this country. You are under the mercy of Hezbollah. If they want to level you to the ground, they do that. If they don't want to do that, then they don't do it. The government is totally powerless in this regard.
Since day one of the Israeli aggression against Lebanon, Hezbollah has been raining rockets that have not been signed by the children of Lebanon, but they made Israelis live in fear, which is what Israeli soldiers have been trying to do in Lebanon.
رئيس كتلة المستقبل النيابية النائب سعد الحريري واصل اتصالاته العربية والدولية في إطار
Future Party parliamentary leader Saad al-Hariri continued his Arab and international talks in the framework of the efforts to balance the Security Council resolution to end the crisis in Lebanon. In his first comment on the proposal to deploy 15,000 Lebanese soldiers in the south, Hariri praised the Lebanese government's decision and the parliament's consensus. He reiterated his support for the government and for Prime Minister Fouad al-Sanyura. In particular, al-Hariri highlighted the role of Hezbollah's 2 ministers in this consensus, as well as Hezbollah's party's approval of the decision. He considered the party's stance responsible and supportive of the Lebanese government's negotiations with the International Security Council. He stressed the unity of the Lebanese people against Israeli aggression. Al-Hariri also praised the role played by Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri to reach this decision. During an interview with the American network CNN, al-Hariri urged Syria to re-examine its policies toward Lebanon and to stop using the ongoing conflict to assert its role in the region.
The international community needs to understand what the Lebanese government has made a huge historic decision, and this is the first time the Lebanese government takes a decision and engages itself into taking the Lebanese army, 15,000 of them, to the south to engage and get the security that is needed for the south. And we will be needing also, like the Council of Ministers said, that UNIFIL will be along the sides with the Lebanese army, and it will help out in the security matters. That decision was taken unanimously, and there was consensus in the Council of Ministers, and the international community needs to understand this historic decision. And it is not merely a political game that Hezbollah or the Lebanese government is playing. And I think the Syrian government, the Syrian regime needs to look and reconsider what kind of policy it should have to Lebanon. Syria, is knocking the doors of everybody now that it can engage and be a positive player in the region. I think if it wanted to play a positive role, it should have played it without knocking the doors, and shouldn't use the conflict and the blood of the Lebanese children and the Lebanese families to knock on the doors and say it could do something positive. If it wanted to do something positive, it should have done it a long time before.
A package containing toxic chemicals was sent to the office of the Palestinian Deputy Prime Minister, Dr. Nassrallah al-Shar. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas strongly condemned this incident. In a telephone call to al-Shar's office, Abbas described the incident as criminal and dangerous. 7 employees at the office of the Deputy Prime Minister in Ramallah were transported to local hospitals for toxic fume inhalation. The envelope, which was mailed and stamped in Tel Aviv, was brought to al-Shar's office in Ramallah after it was delivered to the main post office in the city of Al-Bira.
A suspicious envelope, which has been stamped and mailed in Tel Aviv, was delivered to the main post office in the city of Al-Bira. The envelope was addressed to the Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh's office in Gaza. However, the package, which contained toxic chemicals, was opened at the headquarters of the Palestinian ministry in Ramallah. 7 employees at the Prime Minister's office in Ramallah suffered injuries due to toxic fume inhalation. The victim, who opened the envelope, was listed in critical condition. He showed symptoms of vomiting and nausea. Palestinian Deputy Prime Minister Nasser al-Shar confirmed that the envelope contained toxic chemicals that spread quickly in the air upon opening the letter. Mr. al-Shar confirmed that the incident was deliberate and carried out by an outsider.
من المفروض عادة إنه هذا إما يرسل عبر البريد إلى غزة إلى رئيس الوزراء.
A package was delivered to the office of the Prime Minister in Ramallah. It was addressed to His Excellency Prime Minister Haniyeh. Incoming mail addressed to the Palestinian Prime Minister's office is either rerouted to his office in Gaza or opened here in Ramallah by the Deputy Prime Minister, who reads and comments on its content and sends it to Gaza. When my office manager opened this suspicious letter, he discovered that it contained toxic chemicals. 7 office employees sustained gas inhalation problems and were transported to local hospitals. 2 of the victims sustained moderate to serious injuries. However, the rest of the victims suffered minor injuries.
المغلف واضح جدا إنه صادر من تل أبيب حسب ما هو الختم الموجود على المغلف.
The envelope, which was stamped and mailed in Tel Aviv, was delivered to the main office in the city of Al-Bira. The Palestinian Minister of Interior formed a security committee to investigate the incident. We extend our gratitude to local law enforcement agencies which responded quickly and contained the situation. The entire situation is currently under full control. I do not dismiss any reports indicating that an outside force might be behind this criminal attack. However, we leave this matter to the investigators in charge of handling this case.
ولكن سنترك هذا الأمر للتحقيق هو الذي سيثبت.
The Palestinian Minister of Interior ordered an investigation into the incident. He also formed a security committee to follow up and bring the situation under control. Meanwhile, victims are still being treated at local hospitals. The investigation is still going on in order to identify the type of chemicals used in this envelope.
We cannot identify the types of chemicals and toxic fume inhaled by the victims. We are still examining the substance in question.
The office of the Palestinian Deputy Prime Minister Nassrallah al-Shar received a suspicious package. The envelope was sent from Israel and addressed to the Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh. An employee opened the envelope and panicked when he saw 2 suspicious tissues in it. The employee called me over to assess the situation. I immediately took the envelope and went into my office. I took 2 rulers to examine the contents of the envelope. After opening one of the tissues, a strong odor spread throughout the entire floor. Suddenly I felt nauseous. I also experienced weakness in the knees and shortness of breath.
It seems that the Israeli government of Ehud Olmert is not only using missiles and home raids against the Palestinian people, but it is also using booby-trapped envelopes to kill more of them.
The U.S. ambassador in Iraq, Zalmay Khalilzad, confirmed that efforts are underway in Iraq to reach an ethical accord among Iraqi religious blocs in order to put an end to sectarian violence. Khalilzad accused Iran of exploiting the fragile situation in Iraq, stirring chaos among Iraqi sects and sending Iranian troops to the region. Meanwhile, 25 Iraqis were killed and dozens of others were wounded in a series of bomb explosions that rocked the Iraqi capital, Baghdad. In another development, Iraqi Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki criticized U.S. and Iraqi security forces for carrying out raids in the city of al-Sadr. After 3 years of the U.S. controversial intervention in Iraq, the Bush administration wants to adjust its strategy in Iraq, especially since many U.S. military generals have warned that Iraq might be on the brink of a civil war. The U.S. administration confirmed that a reduction in the number of U.S. troops in Iraq will be unlikely in 2006. There are many reasons preventing Washington from reducing the number of U.S. troops in Iraq at the present time. If the U.S. leaves Iraq, oil prices may skyrocket, and many terror networks may use Iraq as a safe haven. There is also fear that Iran may dominate the region.
A reduction in the number of U.S.-led coalition forces in Iraq is underway. For example, 2 additional army units were supposed to be dispatched to Iraq at the end of last year, but we called off that plan. In addition, we adjusted other military plans until we assess the current situation in Iraq.
لم يفوت السفير الأمريكي في العراق زلماي خليلزاد الفرصة لاتهام إيران بأن لها قوات في العراق وأنها قد تستغل الحرب بين إسرائيل وحزب الله لإشاعة مزيد من الفوضى من خلال الدفع.
Zalmay Khalilzad, the U.S. ambassador in Iraq, accused Iran of meddling in Iraqi affairs by sending troops to the region, adding that Iran may exploit the war between Israel and Hezbollah to stir more chaos in Iraq by sending more troops and arms to the region. Meanwhile, clashes erupted between Shiite militias and the U.S.-backed Iraqi security forces in the city of al-Sadr. This news came after the Iraqi security forces carried out raids in the city of al-Sadr in order to capture members of al-Mahdi army accused of kidnapping and torturing Iraqi civilians. In a military offensive operation, U.S. ground forces were deployed from northern Iraq to Baghdad to help put an end to sectarian violence that has killed thousands of Iraqis so far. This U.S. military offensive operation, which was backed by the Iraqi government, put Iraqi Prime Minister Noor al-Maliki in an awkward position. Al-Maliki is standing between Iraq and a hard place. On one side, he is pressured by Washington to disarm Iraqi militias and implement articles of the National Reconciliation Initiative. On the other side, he is under pressure from Iraqi militias, which share power in his coalition but have different plans than his. Images of bloodshed and destruction have become familiar scenes in Baghdad and the rest of Iraq. Violence in Iraq has become every Iraqi's nightmare. Many Iraqis, including civilians and innocent children, have lost their lives in bomb attacks and daily violence. Many surviving victims live to tell painful chapters of their endless stories.
التي ربما لا تنتهي لأسباب وأسباب.
The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. Please visit linktv.org/Mosaic for more information about these broadcasters, or to view previous Mosaic programs, obtain program transcripts, or receive the weekly Mosaic Intelligence Report. Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation. Additional support is provided by the Firedoll Foundation, the Otto Haas Charitable Trust, and by committed Link TV viewers like you. If you value this program, please send your tax-deductible contribution to Link TV, either through the website or the mailing address listed on your screen. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.